The 2026 Michigan Senate Democratic primary actually turned out a lot different than we originally thought was going to happen. We're going to talk about that in today's video. I'll be upfront and honest, I wasn't planning on talking about this race today. In fact, I had a couple of other ideas in mind on races I wanted to talk about. But after the news last night that Abdul El-Sayed won the Democratic primary, but by a much slimmer margin than what we were expecting from Haley Stevens, I ultimately decided that it was a great idea to talk about this race and the Democrats' prospects now that Abdul El-Sayed is the Democratic nominee and Mike Rogers is who he will be facing in the November election. So for starters, I want to discuss the polling conducted in this race and how absolutely off this polling was. I mean, Haley Stevens was behind in polling by, anywhere from 10 to 15, sometimes even close to 20 percentage points. And ultimately, it's not the case of what happened last night. Abdul El-Sayed only winning by about a percentage point, this according to NBC News, and this is late in the evening or afternoon on Wednesday. So very big news out in the race, of course. Abdul El-Sayed still winning this Democratic primary, which is significant nonetheless for Democrats and their prospects going forward. Mallory McMorrow, who dropped out of the race weeks ago, and Haley Stevens, who he faced off with, have already endorsed Abdul El-Sayed, including other key prominent Democrats, Chuck Schumer, Kamala Harris. Some others have already endorsed his candidacy going forward into the November elections. But this race and how close it was brings a lot of questions about how the November election may pan out. So for starters, I want to go ahead and talk about these polling numbers that were completely off in this election. I mean, Emerson College, fairly reliable pollster, had this race at El-Sayed winning the race by 16 percentage points, sitting about 57% to Stevens at 41%, and that's nowhere near what happened. El-Sayed didn't even receive 50% of the vote, which was significant in this race, so very, very important. And worth noting, I mean, what are the polls going to be like for the general election? Are we going to be able to trust those poll numbers? Because ultimately, that's not what happened last night. We had when we were watching the race, we had an opportunity coming before us where we actually thought Haley Stevens had a shot. And according to polling, that wouldn't have even been in the prospects. But ultimately, that's what happened last night. Haley Stevens came very close to winning this primary and facing Mike Rogers in the general election. Ultimately, again, not what happened, but the percentage point and the margin matters a lot in this race. That's why we're talking about it today. With that said, let's go look at the general election polling in this race as well. So some of the latest polling conducted towards the end of July, obviously these hypothetical with Rogers and Stevens have Stevens up. But of course, there are also polls conducted with El-Sayed, and one of them has Rogers up 3 percentage points to Abdul El-Sayed in the general election. Another has him up by has Mike Rogers up by about a percentage point. And this is, of course, these are, of course, polling numbers that have been conducted towards the end of the month in July. So important nonetheless, and important to note. I talked about this in my final prediction, which I was completely wrong about. And I'll get into that at some point as well. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this before the primary happened, and it was very significant that El-Sayed was not the stronger candidate to face off with Mike Rogers in the general election. It was very open and blunt about that, according to poll numbers at least. That's nowhere near the case. And of course, if these poll numbers are off like they were in the primary, then Rogers may be up a significant amount more than what is currently estimated. Of course, just poll numbers and just, months out from the election, 90 days officially from the election, and we're still looking at these numbers and still trying to understand what they mean and whether they're reliable enough to trust going into the general election. So why is this race so important? And the race is important because of what is going to happen overwhelmingly in the United States Senate if Democrats lose this race in the November election. Of course, according to VoteHub, this race is sitting at about 2.6% margin for El-Sayed, and Mike Rogers sitting at 48.7% of the vote. Al-Sayed sitting at about 51.3%. Democrats a 65% chance of winning. But of course, I think that this is going to change significantly now that we have this race set. Al-Sayed not the stronger candidate amongst Democrats, and a tougher race for them to defend now, given this news out today or last night. But nonetheless, Democrats have to win Michigan. If they do not win Michigan, that completely changes the trajectory of the United States Senate. Even if the Democrats win North Carolina, even if they win Ohio, even if they win Maine, and even if they win Alaska, if they lose Michigan, they're still not in Senate control, sitting at a 50-50 Senate. That would require them to flip a state like Texas or Iowa on top of that. And like I've heard many say before, if Michigan is not going to go blue, what makes us think that Ohio will? And it's a very good question. I mean, we're talking about Midwest states, and what I would say the key difference, obviously, would be is candidate quality, the difference in the candidates between the two, and the Democrats and the Republicans, between Ohio and in Michigan. So, of course, Mike Rogers coming very close to winning this race 2 years ago, Sherrod Brown coming close to winning his race 2 years ago, and facing off against challengers. John Husted, obviously the incumbent appointed senator. Michigan will be Abdul Al-Sayed, who is not a current politician, not currently in the political spectrum as a senator. Obviously running in an open seat. So significant for Democrats' chances of controlling the Senate come from the state of Michigan. If they can't win Michigan, it's going to be significantly harder for Democrats to win control of the Senate. It's already a very difficult task. If you've watched my prediction videos on the United States Senate, you know how I've characterized states like North Carolina. You know how I've characterized states like Maine. You know how I've characterized Ohio and Texas and Alaska. And even though I currently have Democrats winning control of the Senate, winning Alaska, winning Texas, winning North Carolina, I do not have them winning Ohio. I have them winning Maine. But if they lose Michigan in my current prediction status, that would end up in an opportunity where Republicans actually control the Senate with 50-50. That's, of course, my current prediction as of a few days ago when I filmed that video. Of course, we'll be filming more in the coming weeks. But as of this moment, Democrats are in a must-win situation in Michigan. If they lose it, could significantly impact their chances of controlling the United States Senate after the 2026 midterm. So, with that said, let's take a look at the 2024 race here in Michigan. Alyssa Slotkin won this race by 0.34 percentage points to Mike Rogers, and people bringing that to attention and wanting to understand that a little bit more. Well, it's very significant that Mike Rogers got as close as he did to winning this race, especially going into 2026. The difference is the environment. Of course, Republicans won on a wide variety of issues and in major ways back in 2024, and in 2026, we just don't expect that same environment from Republicans. Of course, I would agree that if this was 2024 and Al-Sayed and Mike Rogers were facing each other, Mike Rogers would be the clear favorite. But the question is does the environment help pull Al-Sayed over the top? It's a question that we're going to have over the coming weeks to answer and decide what we believe will be the case for this Michigan Senate race. But I wanted to bring that to attention because if this was happening 2 years ago, there's a significant chance that Al-Sayed would not win this race. In fact, I think that would be more likely. But given the 2026 environment, there's an opportunity for Al-Sayed to still win this race. The question is really who turns out. Who can Al-Sayed get on his side? What voters decide to go out to polls? Are there any Democrats that decide to not vote? Or are there any Democrats that decide to switch and vote for Mike Rogers? Of course, a significant development that would be. But that's the questions that we have to answer over the next few weeks heading into Election Day. Is there an opportunity for Mike Rogers to pick up ground here and really make this, it's already a competitive race, but make this a race that he can win? That's the question, and we'll have to see what ultimately ends up happening here. But I wanted to bring that to attention because if we go back and look at the 2024 results, this race extremely close against the same Republican candidate that's running in 2026. I say it again, I'll say it continuously, the difference is going to be the environment. How close is this race going to be? That's the question. that so many of us have going into this midterm election. So to close out the video, I want to take a look at the 2020 results here in Michigan. Peters won this race back then by 1.7%. Of course, this was on the 2020 ballot. Joe Biden winning on the national level, winning the presidency, in a very important race nonetheless. I mean, in a significant race, that is. Democrats really having an extremely good opportunity there to win that race, and winning it by only 1.7% is something worth noting. Joe Biden won the state in 2020 on this same ballot. Gary Peters only winning the state by 1.7%, something to take a look at. But going back to 2018, if we take a look at that, we see that the race went to the Democrats by 6.5%. So a much better result back in the original Trump midterm. So if that's the case, maybe Al-Sayed is safe. Maybe even if this isn't the margin, maybe it's 2%. That would still put Al-Sayed winning this race and would be significant. But the question is, are Democrats going to turn out for Al-Sayed like they would have for Stevens? But then the other question on the same hand is, would Al-Sayed supporters turn out and vote for Haley Stevens if she was the nominee? I think that it goes both ways. I think it's really going to come down to independent voters as well. Do they feel that Al-Sayed currently represents their state of mind and in the party and in the nation as a whole, or do they believe that that maybe Mike Rogers actually does that better? I think that Donald Trump plays a big role in this midterm election, and I think that we're going to have to see how big a role that is, and whether Mike Rogers can ultimately pull this over the top and win this race come November. Of course, at this point, it looks, at least according to polling, which isn't that trustworthy, that Mike Rogers might actually have a upper hand in this race. But of course, we still haven't seen significant polling done now that the two nominees have been, that they are now official. We've not seen that conducted. But of course, as this race goes on, we're going to learn a lot about it. But the race is set. Abdul Al-Sayed versus Mike Rogers, and this race is going to be one of the most hotly contested races of this cycle, in my personal opinion. So, with all of that said, I thank you guys so much for watching this video. I appreciate it so much. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe Abdul Al-Sayed can win this race in the general election, or do you believe Mike Rogers is going to pull off an upset and flip the state of Michigan for the first time in years? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys again so much for watching.